I think you previously, I think you mentioned this even on your FAN show. You talked about it, that you were offered the opportunity to replace Howard Stern on terrestrial radio.
Wow, it's a long time ago. Yeah.
So that was when he went to Sirius in
When he announced he was going to
2005,
satellite,
which
I
I
got a
think he
phone.
announced it in 04, and then he actually went the January of 06 or 05. But that job, ultimately, the terrestrial job, went to David Lee Roth. How close was that to happening with you taking over Stern's terrestrial radio affiliates?
It was almost a done deal. It got stopped because I was working at a radio station in New Jersey, and it was kind of a mom and pop ownership group at the time. And they kind of put up a roadblock. I had a contract, obviously. I'd gotten permission to talk to CBS or Infinity at the time about the job. And then at the 11th hour, when the job was being offered to me, they let me and Joel Hollander, who ran Radio New York at that time, they let us both know that they really weren't going to let me out of my contract. So it went downhill very, very quickly. I remember driving home and calling my wife saying, we're moving to New York. I'm replacing Howard Stern. And 10 minutes later, getting a phone call, your company's not letting you out of your contract. So that was, it was that. Then I was offered the opportunity, for Free FM in New York when they made that flip post Stern, and really got very, very lucky that Chris Olivero was the architect running things in 2007 and considered me a viable candidate to replace Imus. But yeah, we're looking back, I had a shot for a minute to replace Howard Stern.
How was it then having to continue working for a company that didn't let you out of your contract to do something that you wanted to do? Was there animosity there?
Oh yeah, I was livid with them.
Yeah.
I was livid with New Jersey 101.5. It's the station I'm talking about. And, for a long time, wouldn't talk, to the general manager, the program director, because I felt like in our business, I'm doing afternoons in New Jersey. And here I have this great opportunity to do mornings in New York City. Normally, you don't stand in the way of that kind of progress. You do what I think is the right thing, and you shake the man's hand and wish him well and let him go on his journey for this life-changing opportunity. And they chose not to do that. So at the time, I had great resentment towards them for not letting me go.
Were you, I don't know if the deal got this far in discussions, but were you going to only be on K-Rock, or were affiliates around the country going to have the opportunity to pick you up if they wanted?
There were talks of 3 or 4 of the East Coast stations. It was never going to be every one of the affiliates. It was going to be potentially, and we never got that far, but Philly was on the table. New York, of course, was on the table. West Palm Beach was on the table. And if memory serves, maybe Boston. And then ultimately, and you could check this, I think, did Kid Chris got those stations? Adam Carolla got the West Coast stations, and they hired Rover out of Cleveland for some of the Midwest stations.
Yeah.
But I was never going to do any of those. It was only going to be East Coast.
Would replacing Stern have felt like a harder challenge than replacing Imus?
Only looking back on it.
Yeah.
Because in the moment, you bet your ass I want to replace Howard Stern. First off, he's my radio idol, right? He's the guy, right? He's the Mount Rushmore guy. He's who I love listening to growing up, and obviously have patterned a lot of my broadcast career over a lot of his sensibilities as a performer, as a kid growing up in New York in the late 70s, obviously. But in reality, that show, even if successful, would have failed. What I mean by that is, if Howard's getting 20 shares and I come in with an 8 share and it's great, I lost more than half his audience.
Right.
So I think, again, only now with clarity, looking backwards on it, replacing Imus was actually a much better job, not only because the chance for true success was more real, but WFAN, as we've now seen, a much healthier radio station than K-Rock was. 92.3's gone through how many transformations since Howard left for Sirius. So again, in the moment, devastated. I didn't get the job. But in reality, replacing Imus was a much easier putt than replacing Howard Stern.